So we heard part one with John. This is part two. And later on, maybe about halfway through, I start to question the business model, not in a negative way. I just want to try to learn more because I bring up the fact that people don't have a lot of money. Like in residential, I bring up an example. People don't have a lot of money to pay for a $2,000 board to get their system back up and running. When we buy vehicles, we're not dropping 50, 60K, 80K, whatever it is on a vehicle. Most of us anyway, we're leasing, we're financing. Same with a mortgage. We're not buying our homes outright. So there is a model for this. Now, what John counters with too is something interesting, is that if you're a business owner and you have some capital, but you don't want to spend it all on your HVAC system, you can use the Climate-as-a-Service model, and you can use your capital for other things to grow your business or for instant or immediate cash flow that you need. So it's an interesting concept, interesting business model. We're going to get back to this one, guys. This is the HVAC Know-It-All podcast. This is part 2 with John Zimmerman from Harvest Integrated. I'm your host, Gary McCready. This podcast is sponsored by Cool Air Products, Master, Cintas, and SupplyHouse.com. Go to the show notes and click on the links to check these guys out. When someone comes at you in the retrofit application, a lot of times when you replace equipment, there's companies out there that just replace like for like, the box for box. And a lot of times the original box was the wrong one to put there in the first place. So do you go through and do a full audit on the existing facility equipment, all of that kind of stuff before you say, okay, this is what you need in this building?
We don't necessarily, if we know they're having problems, we don't necessarily go study to find out that they're having problems again. But what we do is more than likely is not going to be a like for like replacement. So that's where we get into the fact that we have to go study the building and say, okay, is the ductwork sized properly? And if not, can we bring in new ductwork and reroute it? And is there enough openings and enough space in the ceiling that we can do this? And then we go check again the electrical sizing. Do they have enough capacity? Is the wire size big enough for what we're trying to do here? And if not, we will go expand it. But the long story short is that what we are selling is a full solution for the equipment. And what that means is the electrical services to and from, the duct services to and from, the pad layout and location. We will manage the install of that. And we try to just kind of do it soup to nuts on everything there in terms of a retrofit.
Okay, so the next question is, do you sub this work out, or do you have your own installers and service people?
We sub that work out. So we kind of take the smarts of it all. It'll be our design. It'll be our layouts. It'll be us sizing the equipment. It'll be us picking the options on the equipment of what they need. Low ambient kits, if they, variable speed compressors, whatever it may be. But it will be all of our design, and we will sub that stuff out to local providers, local service providers. And we do 24-hour monitoring on it ourselves. That is not subbed out.
Okay, so you do 24-hour monitoring. So, okay, that's interesting. So if you're monitoring the room and something's going wrong, you get an alert on that, correct? And then when you have a service call, you're subbing out the service as well to the grow operation?
That's correct. We'll have a local partner that's nearby, and we're trying to build as much functionality into the controls as possible, right? So we have different levels of service call or alarm. If it's the level 3 alarm, which is kind of our highest, we automatically will have a call go out to our local service provider as well as our technician. If it's a level 1 call, it'll go to our technician, who can usually turn it emergency into a non-emergency. But we're trying to automate as much of this as possible, leverage as much of the AI and machine learning as possible. And that's kind of where the real opportunity is for the future for us is building as much functionality into those things as possible.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So what I do want to ask you, because the people listening to this podcast, a lot of them are technicians on the tools, and they probably want to know, because I want to know, what are you finding is the best type of equipment for a grow operation? Because I've seen grow operations that have ductless systems in them. I've seen air handling systems. I've even seen rooftop equipment. So what do you find is the best way to attack this, and with what type of equipment?
I guess it kind of depends on what your ultimate target is. And from most consulting engineers' perspective, they're going to tell you a 4-pipe system, chill water, heating water, because that's going to give them the best ability to kind of maintain and adjust the capacity that's being delivered. I would tell you that most people in this industry, most of our clients don't have a staff or anybody even on staff that can really manage one of those systems. So you're kind of handing the keys over to a car that's a little bit more than what they need.
That's pretty in depth for a grow op. Like that would have to be a big, because you need boilers for the heating loop, you need chillers for the cooling loop, and then you need air handlers that could accept both. Yeah, that's I've never even heard of that concept before for a grow operation.
Oh yeah. So and don't get me wrong, it's great. There's many ways you can reject heat, right? There's many ways you can dehumidify. So drawing on our data center experience again, not to keep going back to that, but one of the things the data center industry found out really quick was how to scale properly, and the idea of and what your block was that you were kind of scaling at, right? So was it a 1 megawatt data room? Of course, now with AI, this stuff's going way off the charts, but you had to have the ability for your units or your equipment to be able to scale with that. If you have a 4-pipe system, you're pretty much installing that pipe all the way around that building and valving and capping wherever you're not using it. So you're paying all that money up front that you may not use or may not get to for a couple of years. You pretty much have to get all of your chiller capacity up front, including redundancy. So you're paying for that you may or may not need for a year or two. And when capital is as tough to come by as it is for some of these guys in the cannabis industry, that scalability means a lot. So package DX equipment that's designed properly for the application. It's got to account for the humidity. So you're talking in the 0.5 to 0.6 sensible heat ratio range. You're talking pretty thick coils when you're talking about that. The ability to ramp fans up and down on a pretty smooth basis. So I would say more of a variable speed situation as opposed to digital scrolls. And then the low ambient kits, those types of things. So in our view, and what we try to standardize around the most are packaged DX units that are sized and selected properly for the application. Not to throw stones at chill water or heating water, anybody who likes that. It's just there's not a lot of sophistication in terms of managing those systems.
Yeah, chilled water and or closed loop systems of chilled or heated water, they seem to be old school these days. I don't see many new applications where that is being introduced. Okay, so when you say packaged units, are you talking about a packaged unit that's hung in the facility, or are you talking about something that sits on a roof or outside the building? Like what sort of package are you?
Yeah, so we're talking more along the lines of sitting on grade next to the facility or sitting on the roof.
All right.
Right. So yeah, package DX, again, designed and sized properly. That's usually grade mounted or roof mounted.
Yeah, and I think having something that's variable speed, like you said, a variable speed compressor that can load match the situation is probably one of the biggest game changers in the industry as of the last, it's been around for decades, but in North America, it seems like it's a newer concept to a lot of people, and a lot of people are just starting to get used to variable speed compressors. But we can load match, like if you do your design, your load calcs and stuff like that, you can put something in that can, and it's not just a one size fits all situation. You can put something in that's got a range of capacity that you can maybe even use for multiple rooms instead of putting in different size units for different rooms, right? Is that a benefit of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, you're talking about a living organism that's going to grow, throughout, let's take the flower phase, right? That's 8-week phase there. And you're going to size that equipment for the most stringent situation. So that's going to be the most mature that plant is. That's going to be at the highest watering rate, and that's going to be at the most intense light that it's receiving. Well, that's not going to be week 1, and that's not going to be week 2, right? So the ability to ramp up and down capacity and airflow to match that is absolutely important and definitely something that's needed in the industry.
Your service, right, that you provide, does that include maintenance as well?
Yes, it does. Preventative maintenance as well as service and service call management.
Okay, so that's one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I've talked to other people in the industry that maintain, install in the grow industry, and one of the major issues I think is the evaporator coils. They get plugged, or the filters get plugged, or the drains often get plugged because of the amount of moisture that's in the air, and just I guess anything that's coming off the plant is circulating in the air, and it's like getting jammed up into the evaporator coil. Is this something? How do we mitigate the issues that comes with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are a few options you've got in terms of from an HVAC perspective, how you can handle that. One that we found as being very effective is bipolar ionization. So we use bipolar ionization inside of the units that have broken down a lot of those molecules that don't allow them to get together to dunk up the coil and whatever else it may be. But there's in addition to that, and this is going to get out of my realm, it's going to be on the growing side of things, on kind of how that plant is expressing and when it's expressing the chemicals that make it the product that it is. Because ultimately that's what's going to get in the air, create the aerosols. They're going to kind of coagulate and create a problem for the coil and clogging it up and whatnot. But yeah, we've used bipolar ionization, and just keeping regular maintenance on these things and operations on these things has really kind of just been good enough for what we're doing.
How often do you find that you're cleaning the evaporator coils on maintenance calls?
So not often, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We've got them scheduled anywhere from twice a year, once a year. We've yet to do anything that's on quarterly, but kind of a more traditional schedule that we're used to. Again,
Interesting.
Having to change the filters on time, and the filters. Some of the stuff that you hear from in this industry is a product of how things have been managed by people who are not necessarily familiar with how to manage these things, right? Or how to maintain, right? So what you may end up hearing is, oh yeah, these things get clogged up and whatnot. Well, maybe the filters weren't changed. Sometimes the filters aren't even installed. So some of those situations there, you may assume that there is what you know of as, a competent and sophisticated individual or team that is managing these things that just may not.
All right. Now, as far as pricing goes, the service that you provide, I mean, I guess it would depend on the application, the size of the equipment, how many maintenances we're doing, how long it would take to install, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, it does. Although we are trying to, and we've gotten it to a point where we're trying to make it a pretty simple number. One thing in this industry is, these people don't want to go through your quote and dig through everything. They want to know what's right, and they want to know a simple number kind of up front. That may be more than just this industry, but where we've kind of found ourselves is in the kind of $100 to $120 per ton per month in terms of a fee. So for like a 30-ton package unit for us is roughly $3,000 a month. And the term that we're looking at on that is a 10-year agreement.
Okay. Now, this is, like you said at the beginning, this sort of program would be designed for the growers that are trying to get started and don't necessarily have the capital to fork out in the beginning. They don't have $250,000 or $500,000 to build their facility and install all this equipment, right?
Well, it's actually the retrofit market that has the trouble with the capital. So in the new markets where they're building something new, they can generate enough support that they usually can raise the capital to do that.
Okay.
But it's the guys out west, Colorado, California, Oregon, that have been dealing with HVAC problems since their origination, since they started. And if you go there, what you'll see is they usually have it's kind of duct tape and bubble gum put together, and they just learn to live with it. And if they had a pot of money that was enough to fix that equipment, they would do it. But they don't have that pot of money, and it's harder for them to get somebody to give them that money. Obviously, the banking issues have kind of been out there in the press ever since the beginning of this industry over the last 10 years. So yeah, it's just not as easy for these guys to go get the level of capital needed to right size or to replace equipment that's needed to be replaced. So we try to come in and fulfill that.
Yeah, I find a lot of businesses are going this route, like HVAC as a service. There's people that have been saying it for years. It's going to be a thing, and it's starting to become a thing in a lot of different cases. And I can give you an example from my world. I went to a service call, and the ECM blower wasn't running. I found it to be a bad board in the furnace, and I used a tool, it was an ECM tester, stuck it on, started the blower up, went outside, started the AC, make sure everything was running, and it looks like the furnace board's a problem because there's no LED lights even flashing on it. So I told the homeowner that they need to replace the board. They said they couldn't afford it, so I left. I wasn't going to go buy the board and put it in for free. I mean, I'm trying to run a business. And then I seen a larger company there a couple weeks later, and I don't know what they did, but the guy went there on a call. It was just a service tech. You could tell it wasn't an install crew. And I don't know if they were looking for a second opinion. I don't know if they were looking to get a new furnace and finance it through this company or rent it or lease it or whatever they do. Because the company that was there also provides this service where you can basically rent a furnace per month for $60-$70 per month. And now it's affordable to the client. So I understand where that business model works in certain applications. I get it. It doesn't work in all applications, especially if you have the upfront money. Because if you have the upfront money, it's going to save you in the end just by, like, if I had enough money to buy an $80,000 vehicle instead of leasing it or financing it, I'd just give them the 80 grand and be on my way, because I'm probably saving money over 5-6 years, right? But I get why the service is there. It's for people that don't have the upfront capital and want to run a business at the same time. So you could speak to that quickly, and then we'll head out for the day, John.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree with what you were just saying. In fact, we plan on expanding outside of the cannabis industry at some point, but the reality is that it's a great use case for what we're trying to do. The need is there, the fit is there, so it makes a lot of sense. But just to speak to some of the things you were mentioning there, while they may be able to save a little more money if they were to buy the equipment up front, I think the way you'll start seeing some of these people look at it, and data centers might be a good example of this, is, yeah, we could go spend $2 million, $5 million, $10 million on our HVAC system that we then have to manage, kind of like we did with data centers back around 2000. We all bought and built our own data centers only to turn around and sell those and lease them back, because we all, as enterprise companies, got into the data center facility management business without trying to. So I could see a scenario where if you go look at like a data center developer and look at their pro forma and you say, hey, instead of spending that $5 million up front, if you did that as a monthly service that you were able to write off as OpEx at that point, what else could you do with that capital up front? How many more data halls could you build that will create more rent for you, Mr. Developer, or, along those lines? So I see a scenario here where, especially on the development side of things, if it's a developer that owns the building is leasing it out, really what they care about is their pro forma, and they care about the numbers. And what you allow them to do with that is to take that big chunk of money, spend it elsewhere that's more revenue generating for them, thereby improving that pro forma. But then at the same time, whatever they were going to be spending on managing that equipment anyway becomes total OpEx included with that, and they can write that off. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be for every industry. The industry that we're doing it in, I believe, is a great fit for it. And I see that there's going to be incentives for other industries to look at this as well.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you having you on here. I know you wanted to talk about this business model, and I'm fully well and intact of having the conversations about the way the industry is going as far as business, as well as, I mean, you're knowledgeable in even how these plants grow to a certain, I know you're not a grower, but the rooms you're discussing, and yeah, you're knowledgeable in all of that. And I wanted to draw that kind of stuff out too. But I mean, this in turn is really more of a business type conversation where we have people that are interested in business and even in the grow up area that might want to listen to this. So I appreciate the conversation here. And it's interesting that it seems we have more and more businesses going this route, and it's becoming a sustainable and successful model for many businesses. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds over the next little while. But I appreciate the conversation, John.
No doubt. I really appreciate it too. Thank you.